better. Y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles. Got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick back, relax, the TWSN.
Appreciate you guys joining me for another edition of the Sit Down with Malik Wright, presented by the Right Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright. We've got a special guest joining me today, man. One of our long-term writers here at TWSN, and Michael Seitz, who's an avid Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Certainly, that had no bearing on the article or the hit piece, I should say, that he wrote about the Cincinnati Bengals, quote-unquote, Super Bowl window being closed. I'm really excited to talk to him a little bit more to really gain his insight on this and why he feels so passionate about it. One thing about Mike, right? Listen, Mike is not going to write something he doesn't believe. I know that when the Bengals really started whooping the Pittsburgh Steelers ass, he really started coming around saying, that the that the Bengals look like they were on the up and up, if you will. So I'm very curious to give him this opportunity to really state his case. A lot of people were saying he was writing clickbait stuff. Here's another thing I'll say, and I got kind of some backlash from this. People said, if he's one of your writers here at TWSN and you're based in Cincinnati and you cover the Bengals, why would you let him write such a piece if you disagree with what he said? Here's the cool thing about TWSN. We never allow, we never pigeonhole people. We allow people to write what they're passionate about and talk about what they're passionate about. So with that being said, Mike, the floor is yours, man. I want to hear you make your case to the people why you feel so passionate. The Bengals Super Bowl window is quote unquote closed. So this is the part where I shut up and I'll let you talk.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me for sure. It's been a while. I've been here, you mentioned, and I love how you are letting everybody write what they want, because if you didn't, would you really be a correct way of operating a media company? Like, you have to have opposite views. You have to get that interaction just like this right here, because this is what brings the people in. This is what will grow everybody, including the people watching right now, just gaining a different perspective. And yeah, definitely did my Steelers bias play into this? I would say like about that much. But like you said, I am not going to write something just for clicks. I'm writing something that I truly believe. And I truly believe the Bengals are a very, very, very good football team, and they are better than my Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't think it's very close. However, there are a couple things that really concern me moving forward with this team. And I would say the window had not closed if the AFC was not so loaded. So the Chiefs are going nowhere, and we knew this as well, and this goes for this year and beyond. But I'm looking at three major things. The other quarterbacks in the AFC right now that Burrow's going to have to beat 2 or at least 3 times every single postseason. I'm looking at the cap space that this team's going to have and how much money they're going to have tied up in Burrow and probably Chase in, a year or two. And that's going to be way too much for, honestly, any team to handle that doesn't have Patrick Mahomes. And then I'm also going to look at some areas of concern for this year. So I'll start with the contract thing, because this is where I feel like I was getting my strongest reaction on Twitter, is from the whole contract situation. So I was looking at salary cap stuff for every single Super Bowl winning team since 2011. And before the last 2 years with Mahomes and the Chiefs, who I consider to be the outlier, no team had been giving 2 players more than 10% of the salary cap share each. And that goes back to 2011, where Eli Manning was getting 11.7%, and the next highest paid player was barely touching 6%. And that was a trend throughout the entirety from 2011 down to 2021. And you saw what made Brady and those New England teams so good. He was getting paid, but he did not need the other offensive weapons. You needed a good line and a good defense, and Brady can get you there. And it's been the same thing with Mahomes the last 2 years, ever since Tyreek Hill left as well. He can make those great or not so great players look great. Now, can Burrow do that? I think he can, but he still hasn't proven it to us yet. So if we look forward...
Wait. Run that back. Say that part again.
I think that Burrow can make the subpar players look good, but I don't know if he can take it to a Mahomes-like or Brady-like level.
So let's talk about that for a second. And I'm so happy that you brought I'm so happy that you brought this point up. So, Joe Burrow was throwing to the likes of Trent Irwin, right? Trent Irwin uh, was was really having a hard time finding a place on an NFL team before he found a spot in Cincinnati. He's filled in admirably for Jamar Chase when we've seen Jamar Chase go out with injuries, so on and so forth. We've seen him get the most out of players like CJ Uzama. We've seen him get the most out of players like Hayden Hurst, who were finding themselves, going from team to team to team. So when you make the statement that he doesn't make the players, quote unquote, around him better, um, I couldn't disagree more. I think that Joe Burrow, if anything, he's the one quarterback in the league that has uplifted the talent around them in a lot of spots, if you ask me. And so when you make a statement like that or a comment like that, man, I've got to push back on it pretty hard because it's easy to look at Joe Burrow and say, hey, you know what? You're throwing to Jamar Chase, right? You're throwing to T. Higgins, so on and so forth. But one can make the same argument when you're dealing with a Patrick Mahomes. Who has he thrown to throughout his career, right? Whether it be Tariq Hill, whether it be Travis Kelce, whether it be Juju Smith-Schuster, who I is not on the same level as a Tariq Hill, but he's still a pretty damn good wide receiver in the National Football League. I don't think a
He
quarterback
just got cut by the Patriots.
yeah, understandably, right? And I think there's some backstory to that, but there's no way a quarterback should be penalized for the receivers that he's throwing to. But to say that Joe Burrow hasn't uplifted the talent around him, it would just be absolutely false. But continue.
Well, I can agree that he definitely has uplifted the talent around him. I'm saying he has not yet been able to get them to a level where he would need to be while these contracts are handicapping their ability to bring in other good talent.
He hasn't had to, Mike.
Not yet. He's going to have to very soon, and that's why I don't think they can win the Super Bowl like that, because he needs to prove that he can uplift these players.
Okay, so your angle is that he has to uplift the talent around him, and because he hasn't been able to do so, I don't know if you've paid attention, right? But they still have T. Higgins in the fold this year. They still have Jamar Chase in the fold this year, right? And he's going to be here long term. He's not due for a contract for the next 2 seasons. Now, obviously, he's clamoring for one now, and that makes sense to get the deal done if you're in the Bengals positioning. So I'm having a hard time understanding where you see them not having a Super Bowl window this year. You look at the talent that they added to this team, whether it be a Mike Gesicki, who's one of the better receiving threat tight ends in the National Football League, whose catch radius is unbelievable. You add that with a Jamar Chase, you add that with a T. Higgins. They went out and they drafted Jermaine Burke from the University of Alabama, who I stood on the table for throughout this entire offseason, spoke to him at the combine, the whole 9 yards. The point I'm trying to make, man, is I'm having a hard time seeing where you say the Bengals Super Bowl window is closed. And to be honest with you, this is the most loaded offense Joe Burrow has had throughout his entire career. This is the most loaded offensive line in terms of from the starting potential that Joe Burrow has had throughout his entire career. So what about the moves that they made this season, the people that they have in the fold this year that makes you say, hey, I don't see a Super Bowl contender when I look at the Bengals?
Still concerned about the defense as a whole. They're very young in the secondary, which can be a very good thing, but can also come with a lot of inexperience. I think Mike Hilton's going to be a good piece in that back to kind of anchor the young guys as well. I think Geno Stone had a little bit of a fluky year last year. I think a lot of his interceptions were just kind of like ducks over the middle that almost fell right into his lap.
Have you watched the film on Geno Stone?
I've not watched the entire film, no.
So one thing I'll tell you is that Geno Stone, his instincts are ridiculous. He always finds himself in the right place at the right time because of his instincts. Daniel did a fantastic breakdown on this channel. If you want to have a chance to go down and watch that, where he talked about Geno Stone's interceptions. To be quite frank, to have as many interceptions as Geno Stone had last year, there has to be some luck that is involved with it. But when we're looking at it, Geno Stone was brought in here because he is a good communicator. He was able to nail down one of the more complicated defenses in the National Football League, and that of the Baltimore Ravens. I think that's a disservice to a guy like Geno Stone to say that his interceptions were fluky. I think that you prepare for moments like that, right? I think the reason why he had a lot of success is because he understood the coverage. He understood what offenses in the league were trying to do. He's great at disguising his coverages in such a huge part of his game. So when I look at Geno Stone, I think the argument you could make, right, when talking about Geno Stone, is I think you could say we haven't seen him do it consistently. And then my pushback on that would be he was never thrusted into a spot in which we had to see what he brought long term. But I don't know if you heard what Eric DeCosta said about him, who's one of the better general managers in the league. He took over after Ozzie Newsome retired. He said, hey, Geno Stone is one of the best later round picks that we've ever drafted. The way the guy prepares, the way that he goes about his process is second to none. So I think when we're discussing Geno Stone, I think we should show him a little bit more respect than just say that, hey, it was just luck. But continue, Mike.
No, that's 100% fair. I didn't mean obviously every interception, but I'm saying from what I saw throughout the year, he was in the right spot at the right time, but there were a lot of balls that were thrown literally right to him. But I go on the
And that's the name of the game. Would you want him to drop him?
I'm aware. But the youth concerns me as well back there. And like I said, that could be a really good thing. And that potentially, if they hit on 2 or 3 of those guys, could propel them back into contenders. But I don't see all 3 of those guys hitting. And the run game really concerns me. It was subpar last year. They really need bounce backs from both their linebackers badly in terms of stopping the run. But I do love the ranking signing. And I'm not saying the Bengals are a bad football team at all here, remember. I have them finishing 12-5, second place in the AFC North. It's just I don't think that they can run the table through the AFC at this point, this year and next year, just because of how good the rest of the conference is, especially if they're going to have to play 2 or 3 road games in a row. So I'm looking at teams like KC and Mahomes, Stroud over in Houston. I'm looking at, obviously, Lamar and the Ravens. We know AFC North football, anything can happen there. And then even this year, I think the Jets have one of, if not the best defense in the NFL. And you have Aaron Rodgers. Of course, he's coming off a major injury, but he's still Aaron Rodgers. He's going to have them in games. I currently have the Bengals losing to the Jets in the first round, 5 losing to 4 in the AFC playoffs.
So can I ask you? But before we even get to that, you've kind of been a little bit all over the place a little bit during this debate. First, you attack Joe Burrow. You say Joe Burrow doesn't uplift the talent around him, which was false. You then say Geno Stone had a lot of luck that was involved. That's also false. Now you're saying the secondary is young. Now we're getting somewhere. The secondary is young, right? That is a part of the Bengals defense that if you want to nitpick anything, I'll hear you. I'll hear you out there. They have a lot of unproven guys there, right? You got Dax Hill, their first round cornerback, who's extremely talented, moving to a new spot this year, right? He was a free safety, couldn't get that down. Now he's moving over to corner. From what the early returns have said is he looks pretty good. They still got DJ Turner, who they spent a second round pick in, and Cam Taylor-Britt, who they're really excited about. And then you mentioned Mike Hilton, the veteran slot corner, who I'll be honest with you, if I'm looking at it, I think Mike Hilton, he struggles in coverage in a lot of parts, but that's never been his game. That's never what he was brought in to do. That's never why he was praised so much. So when we're talking about the secondary, we should have some question marks regarding that, and I'll hear them out. And I think that you make a great point when it comes to that. But when it comes to Luan Arumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, he tends to get the most out of guys in the defensive background. He has been on record saying, hey, the communication on the defensive side of the ball needed to improve. You see, while you brought up a lot of the Bengals secondary being young, what you failed to mention was the Bengals brought back one of their core pieces in the back end of the safety room, which was Von Bell. You forgot to bring that up, and how he fit like Luan Arumo's system like a glove. And what he did for the defense was really transcended in a lot of ways. He was the enforcer. He was that guy that really helped change the Bengals defense as a whole. He was brought back in to kind of aid some of the younger guys, to aid a Jordan Battle who has all the talent in the world, and I think his ceiling is limitless. You look at Geno Stone, who they brought in, right? Geno Stone is a guy, he's earned the contract that the Bengals rewarded with him, in large part because of the season that he had. And not just because of the season he had, it's because every single time his number was called, the guy showed up. So when we talk about the Bengals secondary being young, we have to mention the the capital that was spent to bring in some veteran presence. Geno Stone isn't like a first year player, a second year player, a guy that was on a 1 year contract that just showed up, right? This is a guy that was able to get down one of the more complicated defenses in NFL, right? And that's the Baltimore Ravens defense. So when I look at it right now, I don't necessarily believe that the Bengals defensive back room will have as many struggles or let up as many big plays as they did last year. Remember, they didn't just lose Jesse Bates that year. They also lost Von Bell. They bring Von Bell back into the fold, and he just adds to the safety room, right? He adds to the safety room. They're hoping to get the most out of him. So when I look at it, man, I understand what your angle is with that. Here's another part I'll bring up real quick, and don't mind me if I just cook for a little bit. You talked about the Bengals defense. You talked about Sheldon Rankins. If there's any part on the Bengals defensive line where I'm watching with a fine eye, it is the defensive tackle room. They lost DJ Reader, who was such a mammoth of a man, who did so much to stop running games in the NFL. From gashing the Bengals for 200 yards plus, and I look at it and I say they don't necessarily have that true proven run stopper that they may have had in years past, but they still have a rotation in the interior of the defensive line that can still generate pressure on the quarterback. That is what Sheldon Rankins brings. That is what a guy like BJ Hill brings. You hope to get some snaps from guys like Miles Murphy, guys like Sam Hubbard, who can help rotate in and help along with that. But when I look at it, I think if there are any points of the Bengals defense, to your point, it would be the interior of the defensive line where I could say that could be a question mark, not because I'm saying it's not going to be good, is because there's a lot of new maneuvering parts. From the secondary standpoint, I hear you out from the cornerback standpoint, but again, I think that they've done enough to answer some of those questions. So when we bring up reasons as to why the Bengals might not, make it to the Super Bowl game, or even saying their window is closed, I feel like we're nitpicking in a lot of places. Because I don't think that there's anything that the Bengals have done this offseason that could make you feel like, hey, their window is closed. If anything, it got stronger this year, man. Even when you look at some of the weapons that they added at the tight end position, like a Tanner McLaughlin, drafting of Eric All, if he's able to stay healthy, they've really addressed the tight end position for the long term. And they still got Mike Gesicki in the fold. That guy has the ability to really have a strong season with Joe Burrow. So again, I'm still waiting for you to make a strong argument to where I feel that I really have to stand on the table and fight hard for the Bengals. But Mike, you've kind of made it easy for me a little bit, man. I think everything you've said so far has been nitpicking. And but again, I'm willing to hear you out a little more.
And yeah, like you said before, it has been a lot of nitpicky. But the big thing that I'm seeing here is with the regression last year of this defense as a unit. I know it's different coming into this year.
But why was the regression? Why was there regression? That's the question, right?
I mean, they got worse in almost every statistical category. They were giving them more points, more yards.
But why?
Everything.
But why? Like the talent, Logan Wilson didn't just fall off a cliff, right? Jermaine Pratt didn't just fall off a cliff. What happened? It was the communication.
And they're coming back as well. But like you said, they're young, and that concerns me. This group, like you said, defensive coordinator is phenomenal. He is unbelievable with that group. But I'm more buying low on the unproven side of things. It's almost like I need to see it first to truly believe that they can take this team to and through the Super Bowl. And that's just for this year and maybe next year. The big thing where I'm saying this window is shut is because of those contract concerns that I mentioned earlier.
But those contracts don't play a role. Those contracts don't really play a role beyond like this year. We have to focus on the here and now. They're going into the season with those guys, and their offense is locked and loaded, right? You're saying their window closed because of the contracts of a Joe Burrow, of a Jamar Chase. Let's talk about something for a second, man. Let's get there, right? So just to go all the way back, the way the NFL works is you draft for the future, you sign for agencies for the here and now. The Bengals, in their eyes, have addressed the wide receiver position for the long term. Whatever happens with T. Higgins happens with T. Higgins, right? But when you look at it, they went out and they brought in a guy like Jermaine Burton, who has all the talent in the world, who I genuinely believe has wide receiver 2 upside. Very strongly, I believe that. That is the quote-unquote T. Higgins replacement in the future if he does leave Cincinnati. They still love the weapons that they have in a guy like Andre Yoshivas, who you failed to mention throughout this entire process. They love Charlie Jones. Now you're hoping that guy could stay healthy. He got a little nicked up throughout training camp. When you look at it, the Bengals receiving core, one undoubtedly, there's no replacing T. Higgins if he were to leave next offseason. There's no replacing T. Higgins. But who's to say that also the Bengals don't slap another franchise tag on T. Higgins, right? They get that deal done with Jamar Chase, the whole 9 yards. Basically, what I'm trying to say is your argument for the Bengals Super Bowl winning, quote unquote, being closed doesn't hold much weight because I feel like the Bengals have done enough addressing of the issues that you perceive as issues to help them for the future. And they've done a fantastic job, as my man Deja Vu says in the comment section, of making Cincinnati wide receiver U university when it comes to drafting. Cincinnati very rarely goes through droughts where they don't draft very good wide receiver talent. That's really never been. That's if we're talking about teams and we're going back and we're looking at their history and we're looking at their MO, the Cincinnati Bengals have very rarely struggled drafting wide receivers. So I don't know if that's really necessarily a cause for concern, nor should you say that should close their Super Bowl window because the Bengals have never shown you anything to make you feel, or to make anyone feel that, hey, they can't draft effectively at the wide receiver position. Let's say if T. Higgins were to leave, they're going to make Jamar Chase priority. Jamar Chase's deal is going to get done, right? He's going to be here long term. Jermaine Burton is here long term, at least for the next 3 years. That's long. That's what I view as long term. And can those guys replace the snaps that T. Higgins might leave behind? Undoubtedly. But continue.
Well, my thing as well is it's about the other teams that they have to beat to get there.
Sure.
I do not see this Cincinnati Bengals team going on 3 straight road games, or hell, even if they win the division, playing 3 straight, what I consider juggernauts in the AFC. If they have to play Baltimore first, or whether they have to play the Jets first, or I don't think the Bills are going to have a great year, and the Bengals do own the Bills. I will say that now, and that does please me. But then you're going to have to go, if they win against, let's say, the Jets or
Mike, what have the Jets shown? What have the Jets shown for you to speak so glowingly about them? I understand
it's the defense. The defense was phenomenal last year.
Their defense was great last year, sure.
It's only gotten better. They have a phenomenal weapon in Garrett Wilson. They have one of the best running backs in the NFL in Breece Hall. Mike Williams, if he's healthy, is going to be a great addition for them. The O-line is solid. He's coming off of a
torn ACL. The guy is known for just catching deep balls on 50-50 deep balls. What are we talking about?
It's a big if. And then you have Aaron Rodgers, who he
can't stay healthy.
That's the big question. I mean, he's coming off the big injury, obviously, but
it's not a question.
From the MVP season. He's a veteran quarterback who knows how to win. He's going to lead them in what I think is.
And what has he won? What is he outside of winning the Super Bowl back in 2009 or 2010, whatever the hell year it was? What has he won? What has he done?
He's been to the Super Bowl and won it. He's been to multiple NFC Championship games, but I'm not talking about them
has lost.
I'm talking about them beating potentially the Bengals, but they're going to be a tough team. They're going to be an absolutely tough out, especially.
But what makes you say that?
Because the defense is unbelievable. They can hold any team in the NFL down, in my opinion. Any team, they can hold them, and for the offense to do just enough. A talented offense, I should say.
Their offense, projecting wise, has potential, and I hate that word so much. Has potential.
Yes, the Bengals secondary also has potential.
Sure, and I hate that word still. I hate it because but the point that you're making is we still have not seen what we've not seen what a Aaron Rodgers Jets team looks like long term. We haven't seen the long term play. We don't know if they mesh as well. We don't know. We can project. We can say, hey, we look at what Aaron Rodgers did with the Devontae Adams, but again, we're going off of what's on paper. Aaron Rodgers, this is a guy that hasn't even necessarily been committed to his team throughout the offseason. He hasn't even been with them throughout the entire offseason, willfully, right? So when we speak about the Jets, I want to deal with teams that have actually been juggernauts in the AFC. Teams like the Bills, who the Bengals have beaten. Teams like the Ravens, who the Bengals have beaten. Teams like the Chiefs, who the Bengals, out of any quarterback in the National Football League, people could say what they want. The Bengals have been the only team. The Bengals have been the only team that have been able to knock the Chiefs out of the playoffs. And not only did they knock them out, they knocked them all out in their own house. Listen, the fact of the matter is, when we're actually getting down to the nuts and bolts of it, If Joe Burrow is healthy, when Joe Burrow is healthy, he has taken the Bengals to an AFC championship and a Super Bowl with probably the worst offensive line that I have ever seen in my life. Like none of the guys outside of one of them, and Jonah Williams, is even starting in the National Football League anymore. So when we talk about what Joe Burrow has done or hasn't done, we have to make sure that we be real with ourselves, right? We have to make sure that we leave behind biases. We have to talk about what the guy has actually done. We have to talk about how the guy is 3-1 against the Kansas City Chiefs, and nobody wants to talk about it, but I'll talk about it. When Joe Burrow is healthy, Joe Burrow has owned the Kansas City Chiefs. That should not be a hot take. Listen, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So when people say this and say that about the Cincinnati Bengals, listen, we got to talk about it. We got to have this dialogue. We got to have this conversation. There is a team in the AFC that scares the shit out of me when we're talking about the Bengals, right? And that is the Ravens. The Ravens have been a thorn in the Bengals' side. Another team that has had the Bengals number, the Cleveland Browns, for whatever reason. But if we're talking about the Bengals at their best, Joe Burrow at his best, healthy, with the team that they have right now, I think the Bengals could do what they did the year that they went on the Super Bowl run. The AFC North didn't get that much better, if we're being honest with ourselves. It hasn't gotten that much better. Listen, you know what you got. You know what you have to do. And I've maintained the same thought process throughout the entire offseason. The Bengals need to take care of business in their division, right? Conquer the AFC North, conquer the AFC, then they can focus on other things. But when you bring up these points and we speak so glowingly about the Kansas City Chiefs, understand something. The Chiefs did what they did with Joe Burrow on the shelf last year. And I'm not even saying that Joe Burrow would have been a thorn in their side if Joe Burrow would have beat them, but I'm saying we're acting as if there isn't a man in Cincinnati wearing number 9 who thinks that he's Slim Shady, who hasn't owned the Kansas City Chiefs since he stepped foot in this city. That is just unequivocally wrong. It's wrong. The fact of the matter is the Bengals have been the only team that have been out there proven that they could beat Kansas City. And if the Bengals can win in their division, which is why it's so crucial that the Bengals are playing the Chiefs early versus playing them later, right? The Bengals are playing the Chiefs week 2. And I hate to put so much emphasis on the Chiefs, but you brought up them as a team that the Bengals, you have a hard time seeing the Bengals go on the road and do this and do that against when they've done it before. They've done it before. But we get an inside look on what this team could do week 2 against your said AFC juggernauts. But continue, Mike.
Well, and I think week 2 is a lot different than the divisional round or the AFC Championship. Last year, it didn't seem like the Chiefs were really kicking it into gear until, week 10. So, of course, you're going to try and win the football game, no questions asked. But I'm just saying it could be a different mentality from a guy like Travis Kelce, who seemed to be pretty checked out last year until the playoffs in week 2 than in the divisional. I also think that Mahomes would absolutely carve up the Bengals secondary in a playoff game, especially if it was at Arrowhead. With the youth that Cincinnati has, it would not be pretty back there. And I also think that Chiefs defense is good. And that's what it all comes down to me at the end of the day. It's which teams have the better defense. And there's arguments to be made that the Bengals are a top 5 defense in the AFC. I think that the Jets for sure, the Ravens, and of these contenders,
I want to deal with proven who have done it. Lamar Jackson has won one playoff game, hasn't he? 1 or 2 playoff games in his career. What do we? Like his play style, their play style is conducive for regular season success. When we get into the playoffs, it falls off. Listen, at the end of the day, I think it's very hard. It's very difficult for me to take it serious when you say a team in the AFC North, the toughest division in football, isn't built to run a gauntlet in the AFC. Listen, almost every game in the AFC North is like a playoff game, which is why I feel like the Bengals are battle tested, which makes them war ready. Listen, Joe Burrow is the only quarterback in the AFC North with the mental makeup that has proven that he can go on the road. It doesn't matter what they're dealing with, and he can withstand all the BS and have his team, with a fighting chance to make it to a Super Bowl. I'm just having a hard time understanding where the Bengals are soft at, or where the Bengals, I'm just looking at it, man, and I'm saying
you said unproven too, and that's what I'm going to throw it right back. It's the whole secondary is extremely unproven. If you're going to match up with a guy like a Mahomes or a CJ Stroud, who we really haven't talked about how much of an offensive juggernaut the Texans are going to be as well, and their defense,
we're basing it off of 1 year.
I know we're basing it off of 1 year.
We're basing it off of 1 year. Let's deal within reason, right?
We're
Listen.
basing it
I
off
like
of
CJ
1 year,
Stroud.
and we're putting it on paper. But on paper, the Texans arguably have the best offense, at least weapon-wise, potentially in the NFL.
What? On paper, the Texans do not have a better offense than the Bengals. Jamar Chase clears Stephon Diggs. Who's their number 2? T. Higgins clears their number 2.
I would take Collins over Higgins, but that's a different story.
You would take Nico Collins over T. Higgins. Okay.
Tank Dell's better than the 3.
Tank Dell's better than who? What 3?
Whoever you trot out as your number 3 receiver.
Okay. Sure.
In my opinion. I think it's pretty much a wash at running back. Burrow's better than Stroud still now. I think
it's funny how that dilemma changes, right? Joe Mixon is now with the Houston Texans, and now all of a sudden Joe Mixon's some premier back. That's very interesting.
I never said that. I've never said that. The last couple of years for Mixon, I've been low on him, and for right reason. I think Moss is a good back as well. That's why I said they're comparable, in my opinion, especially in their respective scheme. But I just cannot see the 2024 or 2025 Bengals running through a gauntlet of an AFC, and then if they somehow do, being either healthy enough or they're going to be too beat down to win the Super Bowl at that point. Especially if they have to go on 3 road games against
They've done
teams.
It. They did it already, and with a lesser of a team, a lot lesser of a team. You're talking about teams that have not proven that they could actually. You're talking about teams that have not even proven that they could be cohesive together, and you're talking about them versus a team that in the Bengals, when Joe Burrow was healthy, 2 out of the 4 seasons, right? When he didn't have an ACL tear and he didn't have a weird tear wrist in his ligament wrist injury, they've been to the dance and they've been to the AFC Championship.
But can he stay healthy? Can he stay healthy?
That is a question. That is a question.
You said it about Rodgers and everything. Like, if Burrow can stay healthy, once again, they're dangerous. I'm not saying they're not, and I'm not saying they're a bad football team. I'm just saying.
But here's the quote unquote injuries that we're saying. Joe Burrow has never. Listen, so I hate the word. Injury prone in a lot of ways, because Joe Burrow has never missed a game that in a season that hasn't been season ending. Has never.
Yes, but he's gotten those season-ending injuries multiple times.
Yes, he tore his ACL, Mike, because his left guard. He tore his ACL, Mike, because his left guard got thrown into his leg, and it tore every ligament in his leg. Yes, that's what happened.
Explain the hand.
It's a wrist ligament tear, and it was out for the season. It wasn't. It was a freak injury.
That's still a season-ending injury.
Yes, no, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah,
I'm agreeing with you. But the point that I'm trying to make is when you're talking about the Bengals versus the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is still new to the Jets, Mike. He played less than a drive with the Jets, Mike, and he was out for the season, Mike, after tearing his Achilles, Mike.
I'm very aware.
Joe Burrow has played with the Bengals, Mike, and Joe Burrow has had success with the Bengals, Mike. So again, Mike, what are we talking about here, right?
And it's about more than just offense, too.
Sure, 100%. You brought up the defensive point. But again, are we going to you bring up a lot of the quote unquote issues that you had with the Bengals young secondary, but are we not going to talk about how the Bengals have one of the premier edge rushers in the National Football League, who literally everybody leaves off of their best pass rusher in the league's list?
And what happens whenever he refuses to play because he's going to get traded? Then what?
What'd you say?
I said, what happens whenever he says, all right, I'm done with this and I want to be traded?
So now we're just projecting insecurities. I feel like that's what we're doing. What if TJ Watt does that, right? I mean, like, what are we talking about here? Listen, the simple fact of the matter is Trey Anderson's on the contract with the Bengals for the next 2 years. Listen, he signed an extension with the Bengals, not fully understanding that, hey, you contractually can't even sign a new extension when you're asking for more money, right, with his agent. And I think his agent put his foot in his mouth in a lot of ways. But when we're talking about it, Trey Anderson's going to be out there for the Bengals, right? All these people that you're bringing up as quote unquote potential issues for the Bengals are going to be out there for the Bengals. T. Higgins going to be out there for the Bengals. Joe Burrow going to be out there for the Bengals. Jamar Chase going to be out there for the Bengals. So when we talk about the Bengals Super Bowl window being closed, like you said this year, you have not brought up a point for me this year to say, hey, the Bengals can't run a gauntlet. Listen, the Bengals made it to a Super Bowl run with Eli Apple. Okay?
Yeah.
Eli Apple out of that corner. So don't tell me that some of the weapons that they have right now can't do it. Listen. I think when you talk about it, Mike, I just got to be honest with you, man. I feel like you're hoping that this is their demise. I feel like you're hoping that this is the end for them, but you have not brought any concrete proof to me or anyone in the comment section yet that says, hey, the Bengals Super Bowl window is closed. And I'm giving you the floor to really go dive deep out and really win. Come on.
My basis here was the injuries are obviously all speculation, and the team's not going to get through the year healthy. It's a matter of who that they miss and for how long they miss.
That's with every team, Michael.
I know, but the secondary being young really concerns me. The stopping the run concerns me as well. And then at the end of the day, what did it for me was how the AFC is just so good at the top. And I don't have the Bengals winning the North. I have the Ravens winning the North. So that means the Bengals are likely going to have to play 3 straight road playoff games. And I know they've done that before, but it is just so hard to do against elite competition that I just cannot see the Bengals surviving through the AFC Championship game with an absolute gauntlet in front of them. I just can't see it.
So outside of the teams that you've named, such as the Baltimore Ravens, who the Bengals play twice, right?
Oh yeah.
In their division, right? So they have that to their advantage. The Chiefs, who they also play this season, you see what team as threats? Because essentially,
Houston.
the juggernaut teams outside of the Jets, right, that you're referring to, if the Bengals met those teams in the playoffs, it'd be a lot like a playoff game, like a division game, because they've kind of met some of these teams already in the regular season. So again, I'm just trying to. You're saying the Texans. You're high on the Texans after.
I'm very high on the Texans.
Okay.
Very high on the Texans.
Listen, I like Bobby Slowick. I think he's a fantastic offensive coordinator, future head coach. But again, you still not sold me and told me that. Listen, I'm taking the playoff resume Bengals, right? The Super Bowl resume Bengals over the Houston Texans. I am.
And that's fair because
I've seen the Bengals do it.
I am buying into the Texans. That's me putting my knowledge and faith in the Houston Texans. I think they're going to have a big year. The offense is just so explosive as well. And like I said, I keep coming back to it too. It all comes down to the defense, and the Bengals defense has the potential to be very good. It's just the youth in the secondary and the potential inability to stop the run is really what's concerning.
And you know how you gain experience in a secondary is by playing snaps and by playing games, right?
It's a crazy concept, isn't it, Malik?
It is a crazy concept, right? It's insane. And you know what they look like in week 1 might not be what they look like in week 10 because of experience, right? You know, I think this thing is not going to look like a well-oiled machine right away, but I mean, just to act as if like that's the be-all, end-all necessarily, it's not. The Bengals' issue wasn't talent last year. It was communication. Everybody struggled from the communication aspect. And if the Bengals got a hold of their communication, they'd have success. So, Mike, again, man, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, man. Yeah. I don't want to, I just think
how about I move into that contract thing talking about 26 and beyond? Because if they really can't do it the next 2 years, then they are completely
but I don't want to talk about that. The reason why is because that would like that we came on here to discuss you saying the Bengals Super Bowl window was closed. By us talking about 26, that means you would be agreeing with me that their Super Bowl window is still open for the next 2 years, which makes your initial claim that the Bengals Super Bowl
window. No, I'm not agreeing with you because I told you why. I said because of the youth of the secondary, the inability to stop the run, and the absolute gauntlet of it, AFC. Those are my reasons. I think
again, your reasonings, the youth in the secondary is not a tangible reason because you're going off of just not having seen it yet, right? That could be dispelled by week 5. Now you're talking about the teams in the AFC when a lot of the teams in the AFC have a lot more questions than maybe the Bengals do, to be quite honest with you. We don't know what the Jets look like. We don't. Outside of the Jets, Chiefs, and the Texans, what is the gauntlet?
And the
Ravens. What is the gauntlet?
Well, those 4 right there, especially if you're a 5 seed, you're going to have to play
2 of them. They played 2 of them already.
Probably.
Huh?
You're probably going to have to play 3 if you don't win the North. Because you're probably going to be the 5.
And if the Bengals do win the North, Mike, what is your argument? I'm just very.
They still have to get through those 2 teams, and if they do,
and they have to get through the Bengals,
and they potentially have to play the Browns, who they can't beat.
So now I'm understanding correctly. You're high on the Browns now this year too.
Oh, I'm not very high on the Browns, but I'm just saying.
Okay, so why are we talking about the Browns right now? I'm just listen. You brought up the Jets. You brought up the Ravens. You brought up the Chiefs.
I said they are going to have to play a team like the Browns if they win the division. You asked what if they win the division. I said.
And let me ask you a question, Mike. Do you think those teams that you just named want to play the Bengals?
No, I don't.
Right. So
They're
again,
part. Listen, the Bengals are part of this gauntlet. Only one team can come out of this
and they've
gauntlet.
proven that they can. They're the only team. They're the only team that you named outside the Kansas City Chiefs that have proven that they could actually run the gauntlet in beating the Chiefs as well. They're the only team.
That's right.
So
Right,
again,
that's 1 year. It's one singular year. So
no, they ran the gauntlet twice. They just
didn't make it
happened
to
to
the Super Bowl
lose.
twice.
They just happened to lose
they made it
with
to the Super Bowl
practice
once.
squad players on the offensive line, right? They just happened to lose with practice squad players starting on the offensive line the year that they lost in the AFC Championship. And the Chiefs still won by a field goal.
Still lost. I mean, at the end of the day, that
happens in football, brother. You win and lose.
Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day.
And Joe Burrow's Joe Burrow.
Yeah, but Patrick Mahomes has 3 rings.
That's fine. Again, listen, all I'm saying is, and listen, I have no disrespect towards Patrick Mahomes, but we're not discussing Patrick Mahomes' ring. We're discussing the Bengals window, quote unquote, being closed. And all I'm saying is the Bengals have been the only team that have proven outside of the Chiefs that they could actually make it that far. The Bills window, it seems like their window is closed. The Jets,
the Bills are done.
The Ravens haven't done anything, right? They crap the bed every single time they're in the playoffs. So when we're talking about it, you got to put more respect on the Bengals name. Like, can we at least agree with that? That you got to put more respect on the Bengals name?
I can agree with that. I just cannot see them winning the Super Bowl the next 2 years. And then when we get beyond that, Burrow and Chase are going to be commanding so much of the cap. There's a very likely situation where they're commanding almost 30% of the entire team's cap space. Just 2 players. That is like almost unprecedented for a team that actually wins a Super Bowl. And as I mentioned in the very open, since 2011, the only 2 teams to have 2 players commanding more than 10% of the cap each were the Chiefs the last 2 years. And I completely throw that out as an anomaly because simply of Patrick Mahomes. And like I'm saying, Joe Burrow is not worlds behind Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. 100%. I like the guy. And if he wasn't a Bengal, I would be actively rooting for the guy. But that's another thing. But the Mahomes anomaly is its own separate entity. And like I mentioned before, with Brady and Mahomes, they're their own separate entities. So if you look at the other teams, like that 2017 Philly team, which seemed like a fluke, Alshon Jeffrey was their highest paid player. He was getting 6.4% of their cap. If you look at like both Mannings in the years the Giants and the Broncos won were getting almost 12 and almost 13%. And the next highest players were under 9%. That's my major concern for the Bengals moving forward once they have to pay Chase. They're not going to be able to surround them with enough talent to win because you do have guys on that defense like Taylor Britt, Stone, Hill, Hendrickson that are going to be up around that same time. And it's just not good. It's not going to work.
That is a great point. That is sort of like the Kansas City Chiefs situation in a large part, and they're still finding a way. And which is why you say
but once again, Patrick Mahomes.
But
that's the great equalizer. He's proven he can win Super Bowls at the NFL level.
And Mike, again, let me just state this again. Joe Burrow was a last-second sack or pass rush from one of the greatest players in football from hoisting Lombardi Trophy, right? So I think that when you think about it, man, they're still going to have to draft, right? They're still going to have to draft players. They're still going to have to add guys.
Yes, absolutely.
The agency, the whole 9 yards. So unless this organization just completely forgets how to run, then I'm having a hard time.
They did it for years before, so.
It's a completely different situation now.
Oh, I know.
Completely different situation. But again, I think that's where your bias with Steelers comes in, right? I think that's fair to say. That's where it comes in. But I think that what this Bengals regime has shown you is their willingness to adapt, their willingness to put the best football team out there for the Bengals, man. You're projecting on what the Bengals situation might be 2 years from now. I'm talking about the here and now. And the here and now is the Bengals Super Bowl window is open, Mike. It is. And I think we can agree to that. So, Mike, I want to change gears here really quickly, man.
Yes, sir.
You put your Bengals bashing crap aside, I guess, for a second, and let's talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers and their projection and how you view how they're going to stack up with the rest of the other teams in the AFC North this year. I want to give you this opportunity.
Yep, my Steelers will be finishing last in the AFC North. I think they're a 7-win team, but Mike Tomlin's weird magic will probably get them to 9 somehow. I don't know how he does it every year. I really don't. I think the quarterback room is horrendous. I think it's better than last year, but it's still not good at all. I think Russ is old and washed. I think he's going to last 6 or 7 games, and he's going to find the bench the rest of the year. I have hope for Fields. I'm just very concerned with the fumbling because that's a guy that's going to make a couple massive plays for you every game, but he's also going to do the exact opposite. I think the running back room is phenomenal. I love Najee. I love Warren.
Mm-hmm.
The receivers, that's just not it. If they get Ayuk, maybe, but they're not going to get Ayuk. I think the offensive line is very much improved from last year as well. Very excited for Fautanu and then Jones in his second year, anchoring it. So I think they're going to have to run the ball a ton, and I think they will run the ball a ton. And then the defense isn't going anywhere. Patrick Queen is such a big signing, but it's all about health because if they're on the field for 40 minutes a game again, it's just not going to work. Simply not going to work. So I have them finishing last in the North at either 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, something like that. So
I think that's very respectable of you and very honest take, I would say. The one thing I will say, when you have an elite quarterback like a Joe Burrow, like a Patrick Mahomes, I dare say that their Super Bowl window is as open as long as their career is, right? Unless you're dealing with an inept organization, I expect Joe Burrow to have this team fighting for Super Bowl hopes, playoff aspirations for the majority of his career if he can stay healthy, right? If this team can keep him upright, this team can continue to do right by him, adding the talent around him. And I think the Bengals have done a great job with doing that so far, man. I don't see this big question mark that you might see necessarily, but again, I think that's a question for 2 years from now for us to actually discuss.
absolutely.
But Mike, man, I want to say thank you to you, man, for joining me, man.
Oh,
And
yeah,
having this
no.
discussion. A lot of Bengals fans
I
are
know.
not
I've
fans
been reading the chat. I love it. I absolutely love it. I miss being public enemy #1 on Bengals Twitter a couple
well,
of
the
years
Steelers
ago.
haven't been good, so it makes a lot of sense. as to why
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
haven't
that's
been
true.
able to-
No, you're absolutely right. But I gotta ask you, what's your Super Bowl matchup and your pick? Or are you not releasing that yet?
You know, I'm not releasing that just yet, but what I will say is there's a couple of teams that are catching my eye this year. I really think the stars are aligning for the Bengals. They're having a really good camp. We're seeing Joe Burrow play some of his best ball right now. So he's a team that's the Bengals are a team that I'm always looking at, and I'm like this team could really do something special. But this year feels a little bit different. I think that the Chiefs obviously will always be the Chiefs. They'll always be a tough team. Then you have the Jets as that one question mark, right? I guess my question is for the Texans, right? Can the Texans keep up that same positive momentum that they had last year? And if they can, it could be special for them. But from the NFC side of things, man, don't sleep on the Packers. Don't sleep on the
Yes,
Packers,
they're
man.
my pick, Malik. They're my
Don't
pick right now.
don't sleep on the Packers, man. I think that Jordan Love has hit that next level, and I think that a lot of people are expecting him to fall off a cliff or expecting that to not be a reality. But I think that I think the Packers can make a lot of noise. Another team, you always got to put the 49ers in there. Kyle Shanahan will always have those guys rolling, and you can kind of feel for that guy because you got to wonder at some point in time, when will that guy finally break through with his team? Will they ever win anything under him, or will they always be just super competitive? And that's just going to be interesting. So, you look at those teams in the NFC: Packers, 49ers.
Lions.
I can't bring myself to it. I can't bring myself. I think that there's a real issue at the quarterback position long term. Jared Goff's ability to just he's a stuck in the mud quarterback, right? He's a guy that doesn't have a lot of mobility. He has a lot of talent in the arm. But I just think that when the going gets tough and it's really time to uplift that team and take them to the promised land, I just think that he's going to always struggle a little bit there. That's just my thoughts.
Well, yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on.
For sure, man. But Mike, before you go, I want to do this quick Madden giveaway really quickly.
Oh yeah,
and just we're not going to do it on the screen if we can, Marissa, but if we can just roll the number, the names, and you can kind of tell me what names are populating really quickly. I know I'm putting a lot on you really quickly, but and yeah, I agree, Tony Blaze. He said it's sad that people think that the Bengals are a stepping stone team. I agree with you.
I can't wait to revisit that article when they get eliminated in the divisional round in January.
No, you got it. So I disagree with that, Mike. I don't envision that happening.
Of
Um,
course.
again, but you're projecting a lot of teams that haven't proven anything. So
Right.
I understand your angle, but
Right.
again, but I think that is where the bias does creep in, where you are having a hard time really showing the Bengals that respect and really saying, hey, you know, the Bengals the Bengals can't do it when they've already proven that they
Yeah,
can. John N says no shot for Eagles. They paid a
I
quarterback,
agree.
2 wideouts. Well, there is a shot for them, right? They have a lot of talent there still. They have a lot of talent there still at the wide receiver spot. Um, Terrell Buchanan says, Malik, don't even speak the Chiefs. You've been wrong about them for 2 straight seasons. Think you're giving them up.
Yeah, see, I
No,
like
I'll
that
keep
guy.
I'll keep speaking on the Chiefs. They're not this holy grail team that I'm not going to speak about. I'm gonna speak about them. But
Thanks
let's
for the love, Ryan.
um let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. Who we got as the first winner? The first winner. This is was us doing our Madden giveaway that we are doing. Congrats to Mitch Rob 64. You're our first Madden 25 winner. We'll be in touch with you, man, about getting all that stuff over to you. Uh, for our second winner, Darren L. Russell 22. Congrats, you're our second winner for the Madden 25 giveaway. We'll also be reaching out to you. And who do we got for our third? All right. Marissa is rolling the dice real quick. And Mike, we should answer some questions too. We should answer
Yeah,
some
sure.
questions, like just answer a couple questions while we're at it. And for the last one, Nate Raid underscore 26. Congratulations, you are a winner. So Darren L. Russell 22, Nate Raid underscore 26, and Mitch Rob 64. Congratulations, you are a Madden 25 winner, and we'll be in touch. Um, let's get to about maybe like 3 questions per we have. So K Breezy underscore 5 says, who does Mike have winning have winning it all this year?
Right now, I got the Packers beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That is definitely subject to change before we actually kick on that opening Thursday. But right now, it's the Packers. I think Jordan Love's going to have a massive year. But out of the NFC, don't be surprised, of course, with the Niners and I think the Lions. And like I said, the AFC is such a gauntlet. If I had to go with the 3 teams, it's impossible to pick against Kansas City. And then I would have to say Houston and probably Baltimore would be my next 2 there. But I got the Packers right now. I got the Packers.
Okay, got the Packers winning it all because they've definitely proven a lot.
Can you see a theme
We've
here,
got
Malik?
we've got Gary Jellison. He's asking Mike, you think the Steelers will bring back Najee Harris?
I do, especially if he has a very good year this year. I think he likes being here. I think they have a good thing going with Warren. If they can keep the offensive line intact and show actual progression this year, like they should, I think there is no reason he wouldn't come back to a run-first offense, especially if they potentially draft a quarterback this year. That would be big.
I'll go a step further. I think Najee Harris has a breakout year this year. I think that
I mean, it's
Arthur
hard to break
Smith
out
is
after
one
rushing
of
for 1,000 the last 3 years, but
yeah, but hear me out. Arthur Smith is one of the best zone run schemers in the National Football League. He's able to get the most out of his running backs, and I feel like Najee Harris is that style of back that will do really, really well. In the Arthur Smith situation, it's the reason why he had a lot of success with Derrick Henry. Of course, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry, but I would say I was a little disappointed in his usage of Bijan Robinson. I thought he could have got more out of him there, but he definitely showed in spots, and I think that it's just something about getting the ball in some of these guys hand. Lucky Luciano, our guy Lucky, says, Mike, the last 4 years Burrow has been healthy. He's won deep in the year. Why don't you believe yet outside of being a Pittsburgh guy?
I mean, like I said before, I really do love Joe Burrow, and I think he's a winner. For the time being right now, it's just I have a hard time seeing them win as a team against the stiff competition that they have to face. And like I mentioned before, I'm going off a lot of unproven and proven stuff in the league. We've established this.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just concerned with the defense especially and the competition that he has to face. Like I said, I think it's going to be an absolute gauntlet to get through the AFC in the position that the Bengals are going to be in.
We got another question here. Is Mike concerned with his offensive coordinator?
It's not Matt Canada, so absolutely not. But no, I'm actually excited. I'm very excited because of, like you said, the run schemes that have gone on under Smith have been phenomenal. And I was a big Kenny Pickett guy. Anybody who has met me thought I was very high on Pickett. Obviously, dead wrong. And I'll admit when I'm wrong. I was dead wrong. I was excited for the scheme with Kenny Pickett. Now that it's Russ or Fields, I still think they can absolutely succeed in it. But I'm excited for Smith's run game for sure. So
Mike, we got some more questions coming in for you.
I'm a popular man, apparently.
You are, man. You are. Daniel Alameda, COO of TWSN, he asked, my question for Mike is, why can't the Bengals win the AFC North? Easy schedule.
I think they can win the AFC North. I currently have them with the same record as Baltimore at 12-5, and I have the Ravens beating them out on whatever level of tiebreaker it was. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if they won the North. But the point still stands there. You're still going to have to play 2 or 3 really, really, really good teams. It's just going to be tough overall.
We got Bruce at Cinematography. He says, who is the AFC sleeper team for you, Mike?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if I can call the Jets a sleeper team. Can I? I honestly think the AFC is going to be pretty chalk this year because, as I mentioned, I have those top 4. If you're counting the Bengals in the top 4 without the Jets, then the Jets. I think there's a good chance the Browns make the playoffs, and I just think there's a lot of crap below. And the Steelers are a part of that. So if I really had to pick a team and had to go for it, if Richardson stays healthy, the Colts could make some noise. But the AFC is going to be pretty cut and dry, in my opinion, at least getting to the playoffs.
Okay. And
I have a good NFC team if you want one real quick.
Wait, yeah, sure. Let's do that.
The Arizona Cardinals might make the playoffs.
Oh, God. I don't see that. I'm not
going to elaborate right now. That's just my point.
Mike, we got a question here. Well, not even a question, a statement. Someone says, I got to have this guy back around Christmas time. What a treat that would be for us.
Absolutely. I'll be a regular guest for not just Bengals talk, some NFL talk, Malik.
Man, well, we're launching the sports talk show on my birthday, September 2nd, man, and I'm really pumped about it. I guess I should let the cat out of the bag. For the first week of our show, we have a special guest joining me, and it'll be Benjamin Albright, man. So I'm really, really pumped up about that. He's a good friend of mine, and we're going to be previewing week 1, so he'll be joining me for the first week of the new sports talk show that we're doing called The Sit Down with Malik Wright. And again, on that show, we'll be doing betting content. We'll be doing talking NFL, we're talking UFC, talking so much. And I'm just excited for this journey, this new chapter for TWSN for us. I guess the other question was from my guy, Quinn Kidwell. He says, what's your projection for the Chargers this season?
I think the Chargers are going to stink. I think we could be looking at...
I disagree.
I think we could be looking at a potential top 7 or 8 pick for them. I think Justin Herbert is very good. It's just, I'm also not a big Harbaugh guy.
Wow.
At least
you're not a fan of one of the best football coaches in
not
modern
yet
football?
With this team, not in year 1.
Sure.
I just don't think Herbert has the weaponry there. I don't think the team around him is good at all. And that's another guy who I've been waiting for him to prove it the last couple of years, and he hasn't. So it's that time. I can't keep believing in him until he shows me something. So I think the Chargers are going to have a pretty rough go of it.
Okay. And Mike Ruffin, my guy, I appreciate you. He says, Malik, congratulations, big things ahead of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys supporting. This is a huge step for us. We've got so much planned and so much in the pipeline as well. And you might disagree with some of the writers here at TWSN, like Mike with his take, but I'm really appreciative of the differences of opinion. One thing about TWSN is we never want to pigeonhole you. We want to hear your opinions. Me and Mike, we disagree. If you couldn't tell today,
a lot.
His stance with the Bengals, and his viewpoint of the Bengals. And I think that it's one of those things where while he got cooked today on the show, I still feel like it's one of those things where that story is going to play itself out. I think the stories are going to play itself out, and I think the Bengals story is going to play itself out. And I don't think necessarily the points he made today are truly indicative of what the Bengals are going to accomplish this season. Tara Buchanan says, Mike, what week does Justin Fields officially take over?
I'm thinking like 7 or 8, maybe a little later. It all depends on how bad Russell Wilson is to start the year. But looking at the schedule right now, I have the Steelers starting either 2-1 or 3-0, and then they're going to start to hit a rough patch. At the Week 10 after the bye at Washington seems like a very logical place for him to start. But also week 8 right before the bye, Monday Night Football at home against the Giants also seems like a very good place to start. I think both those games should be wins for this Steelers team, regardless of who's at quarterback. So week 8 against the Giants at home under the lights, or Sunday after the bye, week 10 in Washington.
All right. Okay. And McKay Breezy said, just checked all the replies and not one posted a screenshot of being subscribed to the YouTube. They followed all on Twitter, but that wasn't the rules. It was follow TWSN Malik and then subscribe. We also got Mike Bram who says, Mike will be forced to change his view on the Bengals after this year. Bank it.
Hey, if they win the Super Bowl, absolutely.
I'm trying to see what else that we have. Okay. So wait. So if we have to double check that. I want to make sure we do right by the people. If the rule wasn't necessarily, if they didn't follow the rule by screenshotting, following, being subscribed, then that shouldn't be a thing. And we can handle that more offline. But I definitely want to make sure we do right by the people. You know what? Screenshot was a rule, I believe. Screenshot was a rule. But again, we'll talk about this all more offline and make sure that we do it correctly. Maybe I'll do another giveaway here and there. But screenshot was something that I said post a screenshot down below. But listen, we want to thank y'all so much for tuning into another episode of the Sit Down with Malik Wright, presented by TWSN. We appreciate y'all for joining the debate. Mike, I appreciate you for joining the debate, man. This was a fun time, man. This was a fun time. And we look forward to having you back in very, very shortly. Very, very shortly. I think
We'll see.
I think
Blake
we should have
Flynn's
you
got a
back
good
in
comment.
maybe the first couple of weeks of the season so we could see what your take is on the Bengals after they start the season off a lot stronger than.
Hey, I said the Bengals are going to be 12-5. So
make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. And until next time, as always, we appreciate you. There's only one way.